So after Lex Will did a video on Dr. Frances Welsing, I've been listening to her work. You know, in between other stuff, you know, you go, you know how it is. You go through things. You're reading the book of Jeremiah. You're reading stuff. You read other books. You know, you got friends passing you, you know, books, sharing videos, wanting you to look at. You know, so when you get through everything and you're like, what do I need to look at next? You know, there's times where she's one of the people that whose stuff I'll go and listen to. And in this video, you know, she drops the whole shebang. I want you to hear this. One thing I just wanted to point out, and I only picked this up while listening to, you know, these barbarians, as it were, and I'm listening to them, and they're explaining, you know, the whole process of Yale and Harvard and Princeton universities, and you know, Brown, and how these are the big prejudiced, racist, bigots, whatever you want to call them. They all went to these schools here on the East Coast, and if you couldn't get into these schools, Harvard was your number one option. If you couldn't make it into one of these, to go to one of those schools out west. So when I was listening to this guy here, and he says he's a professor from Harvard, it didn't shock me because of the stuff I had heard, you know, leading up to this. And that's why I like to listen to the other side at times. You know, I listen to that so I know what they're saying, or I get the idea of what they're saying, you know. But I want you to hear this.
The lesson of Nazi history we have in this country, and it will protect us. It's just the thing that makes this program possible. The First Amendment, which allows freedom of speech. If one believes that is not the right answer, then one has to be one of the most anti-German racists that can be. If one believes that the German people would have tolerated the concentration camps and the gas chambers, if news media, like the programs that Mr. Brown is setting on, if those people were willing to bring discordant views out into the open, I don't believe the concentration camps and the gas chambers could have continued to exist in Germany.
I'd like to comment because I'd like to say that I don't think that there's a major difference between what Dr. Shockley...
I hope you can hear this over the heating pipes. I'm sorry. I put the title in there so you can look it up and listen to it. It's around the, as you can see, the 15-minute mark where she starts dropping this. Listen.
Is doing. I don't think that Dr. Shockley is fully aware of what he is doing and why he is doing what he's doing. But the long-range implications of what he is doing are no different than the propaganda campaign that Hitler and his Nazi unit carried on in Germany that ended up eliminating 6 million Jewish people. Now, what is most interesting is that Hitler said the very same thing. He said, number one, that the Jews were genetically inferior to the Aryans. Number two...
Do you hear that? The Jews are genetically inferior to the people calling themselves the Aryans, which I tend to believe there is no such thing as an Aryan. I believe that it's just another title that they use to hide who they are. That because who they are, they don't really want anyone to know, it seems as if. So the Aryan is some sort of pride thing. You know, like it's like that one, you know, book, what was it called? The Codex of, I can't think of the name, the Codex Magica or something like that, where they try to, you know, they can't wait to get that Codex book because it's going to explain where their blonde hair, blue-eyed people come from and all this stuff, and they get it, and it has stories in there about half hybrids, half fish and half dogs and stuff like that from Atlantis, you know.
Is aware that the Shemites had...
Shemites. Now that's interesting too, because listen, we've all seen those videos where they show, Nazi World War II, and they read from Hitler's documentaries explaining what the, people, he said, who are the Jews and who are the bastards that were pretending to be the Jews. And in that book, the book makes a mistake and calls the Shemite people, you know, Hamite, or Hamitic. And I think it's interesting that there's like a contrast, because she has it right. She's quoting the Shemite, but yet somehow they got it wrong with that book. It was just something that came to mind as she was speaking.
Genetically dominant material, genetic material to the Aryans. And if we begin to understand the way that people who were in Europe at the time that the Semites arrived from Africa, when the Semites arrived in Europe from Africa, they were people who had substantial amounts of color and who had very kinky hair because they were from the continent of Africa. And the Europeans, the white people who were there, had a reaction, a color reaction to the Semites that is no different than the reaction and the concern on the part of people who are white in this area of the world or any other area of the world to people who have the genetic capacity to produce color, who can genetically annihilate their position.
And there it is. And isn't that what's going on with the whole thing with the Palestine right now, and the, the people trying to flee, there are different nations there in the continent of Africa trying to flee what's going on, and they're telling them, oh no, you can't come up in here. You can't come through here. We'll throw you in prison or send you back so you will die, certainly. Same attitude.
I think it's very, very important.
Same thing with the whole thing with Haiti, right? The island gets hit with the earthquake, and they can't get anyone to help them. All this money is donated to the Red Cross, and Obama puts the Clinton Foundation in charge of it. They only build the 6 homes down by the seaside and with the resorts and stuff like that. So the Haitians are looking for some way to get out of that miserable life, right? I mean, come on. Their children were being stolen from them and sent to Europe. That's like biblical all over again. They're fleeing, going into Mexico and coming up into the United States, and you have Mexican nationalists talk about, we got all these Haitians here one week, and then the next week the same Mexican nationalist is all like, oh, we got all these Africans in our land. And then you got these white nationalists all like, yeah, where'd all these Africans come from with their diseases coming into our land, into Texas, the friendly state, send them back.
Even though Dr. Shockley, I am convinced that Dr. Shockley believes that he is perhaps elevating science with all of his charts and all of his figures, but he doesn't understand the things that propel him as a white individual in a social system that has programmed him throughout his life and programmed large numbers of people like him to focus on the genetics of people of color in such a way as to destroy people of color.
I would like to ask